Listen, this story begins with a fire. It was past midnight. Renmore Manor was burning. The flames started at the roof. Then they spread to the windows. Then the walls caught. That great, grand house, standing for generations, was burning. And there was nothing to be done. Arthur Voss stood in the garden. What did he have on him? The clothes he was wearing? A few papers in his pocket. He had grabbed them by chance, not even sure why. Nothing else. Everything was inside. Paintings, documents, everything passed down from his father. All of it was burning. He looked around. Where were the servants? Scattered. Some had run to the village, some to the neighbors, some didn't even know where they were going. In the chaos, everyone had run in different directions. Where was the carriage? The stable had burned. The horses had been saved. Someone had opened the gate, but the carriage had stayed inside. Arthur stood alone on the road. Then he turned and saw a light in the distance, a small, yellow, flickering light. Bind Farm. Arthur knew that farm. It had always been there. He would see it in passing. Small, modest, with a neat garden. Who lived there? A family. Middle class. Ordinary. He knew their name. Bind. But nothing beyond that. Now he looked at that light. He had no other option. He walked. He reached the door. Stopped. The Duke of Renmore stood at the door of a farmhouse. He raised his hand. Lowered it. Raised it again. He knocked. Footsteps came from inside. Not slow. Quick. Someone wasn't asleep. The door opened. A woman stood there. Mid-20s, brown hair, holding a candle. A large shawl over her nightdress. The glow of the fire reached even here, her face lit by both the candle and the distant flames. She looked at Arthur. Was she surprised? Afraid? No. She just looked. Calm. Direct. Like someone who recognized him. Arthur tried to speak. Didn't know what to say. The manor, he began. I saw it, the woman said. Her voice was calm. From the window. Silence. Arthur stood there, covered in soot, tired, proud, but with nothing. For the first time in his life, he stood at a door like this, forced to ask for something. The woman stepped back. Come in, she said. Arthur stepped inside. The door closed. The house was small. The living room was also the dining room. A table, a few chairs, a fireplace in the corner. The fire was burning. It was warm. Arthur looked around. His manor had 30 rooms. This house, maybe 5. The woman walked to the table, set the candle down, and turned back. Sit, she said. Not a command, just a statement. There was a difference. Arthur sat. She went into the kitchen. Sounds followed. Water, fire, something being prepared. Arthur waited, hands on the table. It felt strange. His manor was burning. He had lost everything. And here he was, sitting at a stranger's table in a small house. But it was warm. He hadn't been somewhere this warm in a long time. The woman came back, a bowl in her hands. Soup. Hot. Steaming. She placed it in front of him. Thank you, Arthur said. She sat across from him, her face lit by the candle. My name is Clara, she said. Clara Bind. I know, Arthur said. Then asked. He didn't, really. He only knew the Bind family. Clara looked at him. Something passed through her eyes. He couldn't tell what. The Duke of Renmore, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, I know, Clara said. And in her voice, Arthur couldn't quite name it, but there was something there. Recognition? Or something else? Arthur wanted to ask. He didn't. He looked at the soup, took a sip. It was hot. Real. Enough. That night, Arthur slept in that small room. Low ceiling, narrow bed, a window that looked out at the flames of Renmore. Before closing his eyes, he watched the fire. He had lost everything. The manor, his belongings. Everything passed down from his father. And across the road, in this small house, a woman he didn't know had opened her door. Why did she open it? He thought. He didn't answer himself. He closed his eyes. When Arthur opened his eyes, he didn't know where he was for a second. The ceiling was low. The light was dim. Sounds came from outside. Strange sounds. Something calling out. Animals. Then he remembered. The farm. He sat up slowly. His head hurt. Smoke. Exhaustion. Maybe both. He went to the window. The yard was small. Chickens were there. A cow in the distance. And Clara, early in the morning, shawl over her shoulders, bucket in hand, working with the animals. Arthur looked at the clock. 6. He went downstairs. The kitchen smelled like bread. The oven was on. On the table, cheese, bread, butter. Clara came in, set the bucket down, saw him. "You're awake," she said. No surprise in her voice. "Yes." Arthur looked at the table. "Is this for me? There's no one else up at this hour." He sat, ate. It was simple, very simple. Breakfasts at the manor had been different. Long tables, hot meals, servants. But this bread, it was good. He didn't want to admit it, but it was. Clara went outside again. Arthur watched from the window. She worked quickly. No pauses, no hesitation. Like she already knew what to do. She carried the bucket, fed the chickens, went into the small barn at the corner of the yard. She was alone. Where was her father? Servants? Anyone else? No one. Just Clara. Arthur stepped outside. "Can I help?" he asked. Clara turned, looked at him. That look. Measuring, waiting, curious about what he would say. "No," she said. "Thank you," and went back to work. Arthur returned inside. He sat, stood up, sat again. He didn't know what to do. At the manor, everything had been set. Morning routines, meetings, letters, visitors. Every minute filled. Here, empty. After a while, he couldn't take it. As Clara passed through the yard, he called out, "When can you arrange a carriage?" Clara stopped, turned. "A carriage? I need to get to London, or at least to the village. I have things to arrange." She looked at him. "We don't arrange carriages." "What about your neighbors? They're far." She turned away. "The first carriage to the village passes in the afternoon. You can stop it on the road." She left. Arthur stood there, stopping a passing carriage. He had never done anything like that in his life. Something tightened inside his pride. At lunch, her father joined them. William Bind, in his 60s, broad-shouldered, hair gone gray. He walked slowly, but his eyes were sharp. He came in, saw Arthur, smiled. "So, you're up." He held out his hand. "William Bind." Arthur shook it. "Arthur Voss. I know who you are." He sat down. "Sit, sit." Clara set the food on the table. Soup, bread, simple, but warm. William picked up his spoon, looked at Arthur. "What did you manage to save from the manor?" Straight to the point. No polite society manners. Just a question. "Almost nothing," Arthur said. William nodded. "What matters is, You got out. I was already outside. Why? Arthur paused. I heard something. In the middle of the night. A noise. I went out to check. That's when it started. William thought for a moment. You're lucky. Not luck, Arthur said, his voice tightening. Payne. William frowned. Lord Payne. He did this. Silence. Clara set her spoon down. William looked at Arthur. Are you sure? I am. Arthur looked at the table. He lost the land case, and this. He paused. This is his answer. William watched him for a long moment, then nodded. Bad man, he said simply. Nothing more. He went back to his meal. Arthur was surprised. A bad man. That was it. In London, everyone would calculate what to say. How to act. They would pick a side. Keep their distance. This man had just said, bad man. The meal went on. William talked about the farm, the weather, winters in Derbyshire. Arthur listened. He had nothing else to do. But at one point, William said, I knew your father. Arthur stopped. What? Robert Voss. I knew him, a long time ago. Good man. Arthur looked at him. How did you know him? William smiled. Long story. I'll tell you someday. And he went back to eating. Arthur held on to that sentence. I knew your father. In the afternoon, a carriage passed on its way to the village. Arthur stepped onto the road, raised his hand to stop it. The driver looked at him, surprised. Who was this man, standing in the road? But he stopped. Arthur got in. In the village, he went to a lawyer, wrote letters, sent word to the bank. 2 hours later, he returned. At the farm gate, Clara was in the yard. Arthur paused as he passed. Thank you, he said, for last night. Clara looked at him. You're welcome. How long can I stay? He began. As long as you like, Clara said. Simple. Flat. Not inviting. Not pushing him away. Just stating it. Arthur nodded. Went inside. That night, he sat in his room. He looked out the window where Renmore had stood. The flames were gone. Now there was just a dark mass. Collapsed walls. The roof gone. How long would this take? The lawyer had said at least 2 months. Papers, insurance, rebuilding plans. 2 months. 2 months on this farm. Arthur leaned against the wall. His manner was gone. His enemy had won, at least for now. And he was here, in a small room, under a low ceiling. But that lunch came back to him. The warm soup. William saying, bad man. And Clara saying, as long as you like. There was no politeness in it. No coldness either. Just real. Arthur closed his eyes. 2 months. Maybe longer. A week passed. Arthur was still at the farm. He had sent letters to London. To his lawyer. The bank. His contacts in Parliament. Replies were coming, but slowly. The Manor's insurance was complicated. Documents had burned. Everything took time. Arthur woke up, wrote letters, waited. And in the meantime, the farm went on. It was Tuesday morning. Clara was heading outside with buckets. Morning milk. Same time, every day. Arthur stood by the door. Coffee in hand. He saw her. 2 buckets. Heavy. You could see it in the way her shoulders tightened. Let me, Arthur said. Clara stopped. Looked at him. No, thank you. They're heavy. I carry them every day. Still. Clara held one out. Fine. Take it. Arthur took it. They walked. Entered the barn. The cow was there. Big. Calm. Looking at Arthur. Arthur held the bucket. then didn't know what to do. Clara knelt beside the cow, started working. Arthur waited, bucket in hand, standing there, unsure. After a while, Clara looked up, saw him, just standing there with the bucket, and she laughed. Small, unexpected, real. "Put it over there," she said. "Carry it when it's full." Arthur set the bucket down. His face felt warm. He didn't want to notice, but he did. "You've never done this," Clara said, still smiling. "No." "It shows." Arthur said nothing. But inside, that proud, sharp, all-knowing man, something small shifted. In the evenings, her father talked. Not every night, but most. After dinner, they sat by the fire. William, Clara, and now Arthur. William spoke. About old Derbyshire, the farm, life. One evening he talked about the war, the Napoleonic Wars, what he had heard as a young village boy. Another night, he spoke about their first winter on this farm, how his father had bought the land, how hard it had been. Arthur listened, just listened. In London, everyone talked. Parliament, news, gossip. But this man spoke differently, from his own life, what he knew. One evening, William fell silent, looked at Arthur. "Are you someone who listens?" he said. Arthur was surprised. "What do you mean?" "You seem like it. Someone who listens." He nodded. "Rare thing." Arthur said nothing, but the sentence stayed with him. On Thursday, the rain began. Derbyshire rain. Not light, but steady. The kind that doesn't intend to stop. By afternoon, Clara rushed inside. "The roof's leaking." Arthur stood up. "Where?" "The storage. The hay will get wet." They both ran. The storage shed was small at the back of the yard, and yes, water was coming through, a thin line from the corner. Clara grabbed a ladder, leaned it against the wall. "I'll go up," Arthur said. Clara paused. "You?" "It's not hard." She watched him for a second. "All right." Arthur climbed up. The tiles were wet, slippery. He moved carefully. Found the problem. One tile had shifted. "Do you have a spare?" he called. "In the shed, right corner." Clara handed it up. Arthur took it, set it in place, pressed it down. He climbed back down. They both looked at the roof. The dripping had stopped. "It's done," Arthur said. Clara looked at him. They were both wet now, from the rain. Her hair stuck to her face. "Thank you," she said. 2 words, but full. That night, sitting by the fire, Arthur thought, this woman was interesting. His title didn't affect her. Money, power, his name in London. None of it. When Clara looked at him, she didn't see those things. She saw the man standing there, what he could do, what he couldn't. And that felt strange. Not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar, because he wasn't used to it. Friday came. Arthur was walking through the yard when he stopped. Something hit him. Sudden. Clear. He didn't know where it came from. The garden. This garden. Small, neat, with an apple tree in the corner. Why did it feel familiar? He narrowed his eyes. Looked and remembered. A long time ago. He was 10, maybe 12. His father had brought him to meet a family in Derbyshire. Business. A small land deal. Arthur had stepped out of the carriage. While the adults talked, he had looked at the garden. And there was a little girl. 8, maybe 9, sitting under the apple tree, drawing something in the dirt. Arthur hadn't looked closely. He had just passed by. But now, this garden, that apple tree, the same. Clara was in the kitchen. Arthur walked in. "Clara." She turned. "I've seen you before," Arthur said. Slowly, unsure. "A long time ago. In this garden." Clara looked at him. 1 second. 2. "You didn't see me," she said. Arthur frowned. "But you looked," Clara said. Her voice was calm, not harsh, just real. "You passed by." Seeing is something else. Silence. Arthur heard it. Really heard it. "What about you?" he asked. "Did you see me?" Clara turned back to her work. "I did," she said. That was all. That night, Arthur lay in his room. He looked at the ceiling. You looked. You passed by. Seeing is something else. That little girl, under the apple tree, and him, looking from the carriage, then moving on. 20 years ago. And now he was lying in her house. That same girl, waking up every morning, feeding animals, fixing roofs. And seeing him, truly seeing him. Arthur closed his eyes. There was something inside him. He didn't want to name it. But it was there. The second week began, and Arthur was waiting for replies to his letters. The lawyer had written. The papers were being prepared, but it would take time. The bank had written. His accounts were temporarily frozen, but it was being sorted out. Time. Everything needed time. Arthur stayed on at the farm, Easta. On Tuesday morning, 2 horses arrived. Arthur saw them from the window. The men were strangers to him, well-dressed, formal, but not servants. They stopped at the farm gate. Clara was in the yard. The men walked toward her. Arthur cracked the window open. He couldn't hear them. They were too far away. But he saw Clara stop. She was listening. One of the men held out a paper. Clara didn't take it. The conversation went on. It dragged out. Clara wasn't nodding. Clearly she was saying no, if not with words, then with her whole posture. The men were persistent. Then Clara turned and came inside. Arthur was waiting at the door. "Who are they?" Clara tried to walk past him. Arthur didn't move. "Who are they, Clara?" Clara stopped. "Payne's men." Arthur went still. "What did they want?" Clara walked to the table, sat down. "They wanted me to sell the farm." "What?" "The land dispute has widened." She spoke plainly, not angry, not frightened, just stating it. Payne now claims this land belongs to him too. He wants to buy it before it goes to court. Said it would be easier that way. "Easier," Arthur repeated. His voice had hardened. "Yes." "What did you say?" "I said no." Arthur looked at her. "Are you alone in this?" Clara lifted her head. "I've always been alone in it." Arthur went outside. The men were still there, standing beside their horses. They hadn't left. Arthur walked toward them. They saw him, recognized him. That much was clear from the way they looked at each other. Arthur stopped in front of them. "The Duke of Renmore," one of them said. His voice was cautious. "You know who I am," Arthur said. "Then you also know this. This farm belongs to the Bind family. Payne has no claim to this land. The court will prove that soon enough." He paused. "If you come back again, I'll be here." The men looked at each other. Then they mounted their horses and left. Arthur went back inside. Clara was standing there, at the door, having seen everything. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. "Why not?" "Because this is not your matter." Arthur took a step closer. "Payne burned my manor. Now he's coming for your farm." He paused. "That makes it my matter. Not for you. For me." Clara looked straight at him. "I can handle it." "Alone?" I've always handled it alone." Arthur looked at her. That calm face, that honest face, that face that never bent. "I'm not going to let them take this farm," he said. Clara looked at him for a second. "This is not your farm." "I know." He paused. "But it is yours." Silence. Clara heard that sentence. Her face didn't change, but something passed through her eyes. Quick, almost too quick to see. Then she turned away. "Do you know if Father has rested?" she asked, in a normal voice, as if changing the subject. "I don't know. I'll check." And she left. That afternoon, Arthur sat down at the table. He took out paper, started writing, not to London this time, about Payne's land claim. To the lawyer. They needed the documents for Bind Farm. They needed the boundary records. He wrote for hours. William came out of the study that afternoon. He saw Arthur, at the table, papers spread out in front of him, pen in hand. He looked at him. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Preparing documents to challenge Payne's claim." "For this farm?" "Yes." The old man said nothing for a second. Then he sat down across from him. "What do you need?" he asked. "Land records, the oldest ones." William stood up, pulled an old file from the cupboard, set it on the table. "From my grandfather's time," he said. "It's all there." Arthur took it, opened it, began reading. William sat down and waited. That afternoon, the two of them worked side by side, the old farmer and the Duke, at a small table, old records spread before them. That evening, Clara brought in dinner. She looked at the table. Papers, records. Both men bent over them. She didn't say anything. She set the plates down, turned to leave. But at the door, she stopped. Without looking back, she said, "Thank you." She had said it quietly, almost too softly to hear, but Arthur heard it. That night, Arthur lay in his room. He thought about those two words. "But it is yours." When Payne burned my manor, I felt anger. But this was different, something deeper. The manor had been stone and wood. It could be rebuilt. This farm was something else. It had life in it. William's stories, Clara's mornings, that apple tree. And someone was trying to take it. Arthur closed his eyes. Not happening, he thought. Not happening. That week, Arthur worked. He got up early, sat at the table, and wrote. Letters to the lawyer, notes to his contacts in London. He went through the land records one by one. Sometimes William sat with him. Sometimes Clara brought tea, set it down, and left. No one asked, "Why are you doing this?" No one thanked him too much. Life just kept moving. Arthur noticed that, and strangely enough, it felt good. On Thursday evening, after dinner, William spoke. There was no plan to it. It just came out in the flow of things. "I've been thinking about your father these past few days," he said. Arthur looked at him. "Why?" "Because of you." William looked at the fire. "You're like him, not in the face, in the way you carry yourself." Arthur said nothing. "Robert Voss was a good man," William said. "You know that too." "I do. He once did us a kindness." William paused. Maybe it was a small thing to him, but to us, it was big. Arthur leaned forward. "What did he do?" William told him. It had been 20 years ago. Clara was only 8. That winter had been brutal. The animals got sick. The harvest was poor. The farm was going through a hard time, and there had also been a debt. A small one, but heavy on them all the same. A tax issue, calculated wrong. The Bind family shouldn't actually have had to pay it. But on paper, It looked that way. And in those days, things like that weren't easy to fix. When Robert Voss came to the village on other business, William had mentioned it, just by chance, while the grown men were talking. Robert had listened and said nothing. A week later, the tax issue was gone. William never fully knew how it had been solved, but it had been. And that year, the farm stayed standing. Arthur listened. That was the end of it. The room went quiet. "My father did that?" Arthur said. "There wasn't anyone else." William shrugged. Maybe it was small to him, but if that winter had gone another way, he left the sentence unfinished. Anyway, Arthur stood up, walked to the window. He thought about his father, that calm man who spoke little and did much. He never talked about things like that. He just did them and moved on. Arthur turned back. "Did Clara know about it?" William smiled. "She was little, but I told her later, when she was older." Arthur looked toward the door. Clara was in the kitchen. He could hear her moving around. He stood up, went to the kitchen. Clara was at the sink, washing dishes. Arthur stepped in. Stopped. "Did you know?" he asked. Clara turned, looked at him. She understood right away what he meant. "Yes. And is that why you opened the door?" Clara paused for a second. "Partly," she said. "Partly," Arthur repeated. "What else?" Clara dried her hands, turned to him. She looked at him, that steady, honest look she always had. "Because the man at the door that night wasn't a duke," she said. "He was just someone, empty-handed, covered in soot, not knowing where to go." Silence. "And?" Arthur said. "And I had no reason to keep the door closed." Arthur heard it. Just someone. Not the Duke. Not the Duke of Renmore. Just someone. When was the last time he had been seen like that? Without his title, his money, his power. Just as himself. He couldn't remember. Late that night, Arthur sat at the table. He went over the final documents about Payne's land claim. Boundary records, old deeds, tax papers. And he found it. Something small. A date error. Payne's claim was based on a document from 1831. But the Bind family's deed was from 1829. 2 years earlier. Payne's claim had no foundation. Arthur wrote it all down. Clear. Direct. Unarguable. He finished just before dawn. Sealed the letter. It would go to the lawyer. He stood. Looked out the window. Outside was dark. The farm was quiet. But inside him, there was no silence. Not that empty, dark feeling he had when the manor burned. He felt full. Payne collapsed. The court decision came on Friday morning. Arthur took the letter from the lawyer, read it, set it down. It was over. The land case had been decided in Arthur's favor. Bind Farm was safe. Payne's claim had no basis. The court had seen it, and the manor case had been handled as well. The fire was ruled intentional. One of Payne's men had confessed, under pressure, but he had confessed. Payne had withdrawn to London. He would not be seen in Derbyshire again. Arthur folded the letter, put it in his pocket. He stood, looked out the window. The farm was the same as always. Clara in the yard, William sitting by the barn, chickens moving about. Nothing had changed, but everything had changed. That afternoon, another letter came from London, for Renmore. The insurance had been approved. The money had come through. The architect was ready. When would construction begin? Arthur folded that letter too. The manor would be rebuilt. Plans were ready. The money was there. It was only a matter of time. And Arthur had to leave. He had no suitcase. What had he taken the night of the fire? The papers in his pocket, the clothes on his back. That was all. In 2 weeks, he had borrowed a few things from Clara's late mother's cupboard. Old, oversized, not quite fitting, but he had worn them. Now he folded them and left them in the corner. He was ready. He went downstairs. William was in the kitchen. When he saw Arthur, he stood. "You're leaving?" "Yes." William held out his hand. Arthur shook it. "Come by from time to time," William said. Simple. "I will," Arthur said. William sat back down, returned to his tea. Arthur stepped outside. Clara was in the yard. By the apple tree, a branch had broken. She was tying it. Arthur walked over, stood beside her. Clara looked up. They looked at each other. "I'm leaving," Arthur said. "I know." Clara turned back to the branch, kept tying it. Silence. The Derbyshire wind moved through. Cold, clean, familiar now. "I want to thank you," Arthur said. "No need." "There is." He paused. "You opened the door, without asking, without thinking. That night I couldn't have done anything else. You know that." Clara kept her eyes on the branch. "Anyone would have." "No." Arthur's voice dropped. "They wouldn't." Clara let go of the branch, turned, looked at him. That same steady, honest look. Arthur continued. "I stayed here for 2 weeks." He paused. "And in those 2 weeks, I felt something I haven't felt in London for years." "What?" Arthur thought, searched for the right word. "That I was there," he said. "Truly there." Clara looked at him. 1 second. 2. Then she turned, looked at the tree. Arthur spoke again. "I want to come back," he said, "if you'll allow it." Clara looked at the branch. It was tied well. "As a duke?" she asked. "No." "Then as what?" Arthur thought. "As just someone," he said. Silence. Long. Full. Shared between them. The wind passed. The branches of the apple tree moved. Clara turned. She looked at her. John, with those eyes that had been the same for 20 years. The girl under the apple tree. The woman who opened the door. The woman who fixed roofs, carried buckets, never bent. "The door is open," she said. Arthur went to London. Renmore began to rise again. Architects came, workers came, stone arrived. Every day it stood a little taller. But every evening, Arthur took the road to Derbyshire, to Bind Farm. William made his tea. Clara was in the yard, or the kitchen, or fixing something. Arthur came in, sat down. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. Both were good. One day, Arthur didn't go, because Clara had come. She was in the garden at Renmore, newly planted, still young trees. Clara was bent over, looking at something. Arthur saw her from the window, went down. "What are you looking for?" he asked. Clara straightened. "Are you going to plant an apple tree?" Arthur was surprised. "I hadn't thought about it." "Think about it." Clara looked around the garden. "It would be good here." Arthur looked at the garden, then at Clara. "If you plant it, it will be," he said. Clara looked at him for a second. Then she smiled. That smile, different from the one when she laughed in the barn. Bigger, warmer. That spring, an apple tree was planted in the garden of Renmore Manor. Small. Just a sapling. It would take years to grow. But it was there. And every morning, Arthur looked at it. And Clara was there beside it. Always there. Waiting to be seen. The manor burned. Everything was gone. And that night, there was a small light in the distance. Arthur walked toward it, and what he found was worth far more than stone and wood. Thank you for listening to the story all the way to the end. Please tell us which city you're watching from and what the story made you feel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss new stories.